fit this front wheel and front brake.
Okey-doke.
Which is a little bit of a pain in the arse one, I'm afraid.
So I think we'll start by... Actually no, it's a BB5, isn't it?
Yeah.
Brilliant. I was going to say we need to face the front disc brake mounts. So like we face the head tube and the fork and stuff.
Yeah.
There's a tool that you clamp in the dropouts, which faces off these little tabs here where the brake mounts to make sure everything's parallel. But Avid, in the infinite wisdom, made their brakes with these little V-brake conical dome washers, so you've got articulation in the mount, so you don't need to face your mounts, which is brilliant at 5 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon.
So I thought that
Wednesday afternoon.
I thought that brilliant was a sarcastic one, but
no.
Okay, you genuinely have.
Yeah, it's genuinely good.
Now, some people might be thinking cable brake, cable disc brake, what? But yeah, cable disc brakes, especially the Avid models, the BB5 and the BB7, are actually really pretty damn good for trials.
Yeah, it's surprising. We find that the power is much better than like a basic hydraulic disc brake. Obviously, a bit more maintenance because sometimes the cable gets full of gunk and stuff. But once they're set up, they work really, really well. Bit of a semi-minefield, especially with trials bikes. The position of the brake mount relative to the axle. So this is a front. This is an international standard mount. So you've got a fixed distance from here to here and from here to here. Some of the trials forks were made at +20, which means 20mm bigger rotor. So the mount itself is actually 10mm further up the leg. And the same on the rear. Some were IS, which is actually further down on the rear than the front. Some are +20, some are +50, some +40. So you can run into a real minefield, and with all the adapters that are available for different types of calipers, you can get stuck. So welcome to give us a shout, and we're happy to, even if we have to point you in the direction of a different mount we don't sell, happy to make sure that you get something that works first time, because we know it's really frustrating to end up with loads of mounts lying around that you're never going to use. So.
Yeah. Just looking at this bike, it's such a cool mix of kind of new school and old school.
Yeah,
it's generally fairly old school. I mean, it is a 15-year-old frame, but it still looks pretty modern. But then you've got like the old cranks, like a BB5 brake, but then you've got the modern bar and stem on there, but then you've got the old hubs and the old tyre, but then you've got a new front tyre. Yeah, it's quite an eclectic mix.
BB5, BB7s are really, really easy to set up. Main thing to remember is the inside pad is fixed and the outside pad moves. So you want to set the rotor up as close as possible to the fixed pad as you can without it touching. Otherwise, when you pull the arm, it's going to have to flex the rotor over to meet it, and then it feels a bit mushy at the lever. If you get them set up nicely with the pads flush and the rotor knee very close to the fixed pad, as that pad comes in, it feels really, really, really positive at the lever. The other thing with these domey washers, it's not going to work right now because I need to do a bit more work on it, but you can basically spin the brake, pull the arm on slowly, and that will centre the caliper over the rotor.
Yeah.
Then just nip the bolts down really gently, sort of working backwards and forwards, and that should set the rotor and the caliper line pretty much perfectly, and then you haven't got too much work to do from there. Yeah, just in the middle of setting this front brake up, and the rotor's kind of waving a little bit. It was touching the pads, and we've got it better. We've got a little tool that we use for straightening rotors. You can buy specific rotor straightening tools, or you can head to your toolbox and use one of these that pretty much everyone's probably got. First thing to make sure is that the jaws are clean. You don't want to be putting grease or oil on your rotor. You need to get it down nice and tight so it's about the same width as the rotor. If you give it a spin, I'll use this little pad adjuster here. You can hopefully hear the touching. So you can just hear it tinging in there. So that's touching on this inside pad. So you also need to bend the rotor away. Find the part where it's touching. Just confirm that. And then it's surprising how far you need to bend the rotor to make it actually change shape. It's quite a lot of movement. Just go gently at first, as you get used to the feeling of it. Touch on there. That brake's super keen at the moment, so once we back it off, hopefully should see the rotor's running free. One little touch. This is a pretty useful skill to learn when riding trials, because it's quite often you'll just touch a rotor, clatter it on a wall or something, and this rotor's actually got a couple of battle scars. There's one just there where it's been smashed on a wall, a bit of brick dust still in it, so learning to do this is worth doing, even if you've got a really knackered old rotor. Just bolt it onto a hub or a wheel and just have a go at straightening it, and if it gets better, then happy days. You learn something, and you can possibly even do it out in the field. If you've got a little adjustable spanner, it helps you get home with a working brake. There we go.
Nice.
So before we put the outer cable on, I'll run some lubricant down this inner cable. Just means that the levers are much smoother, much lighter to pull, much lighter. Yeah, tide brain, much lighter to pull.
Chain lube.
Yeah, chain lube works. We went through a stage of using engine oil, car engine oil.
Really?
But it actually it works really well when it's fresh. But over time it breaks down and gets quite sticky and gummy.
Okay.
So I wouldn't recommend that. But yeah, wet chain lube works. Something like with Teflon in it, like TF2 or DT85 or something, works well as well. Just use a bit of that. There's loads of ways of doing it, but I just sort of put a bit on my fingers and just run it down the cable as I go. And then you got a nice coated cable. So again, we'll try and figure out enough cable for a full 360 on the bars, because we know how Ali rides.
Get those foot jam tail whips on the go.
And then it's often quite neat to try and run the cable through the inside of the fork leg there. So we'll try and work that in as well. That looks pretty good. Hopefully most of the setup work's done on this front brake. It's just going to be a case of bolting the cable in and getting the amount of lever throw sorted out. And there's a little tiny detail which doesn't really rear its head anymore, but for a while trials fork manufacturers went through a stage of putting a cable guide on the back of the fork there, which, a bit like we discussed at the head tube, you've got a sort of thin to thick to thin section, and that was causing the stress riser, and forks were cracking on the back of the leg from the cable guide, which is a bit unusual, but that's
now
trials.
There's a stint of forks cracking because front Magura brake mounts.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that's still not as common. The manufacturers have found ways around it now by integrating like a brake booster that runs right across the top. But because you obviously had all the force increases as you get towards the crown race, and there's a big fat stiff section of brake mount there, you get loads of cracks at the top of the top brake mount. Well, that seems to be on the way now. Seems to be solved.
Is that a good hard squeeze, bedding in the ferrules and stuff?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the inner cable will stretch a little bit at first, and bedding the ferrules in. Just making sure that the clamp bolt isn't going to slip as well, because obviously that's not ideal. So ideally, as you say, on any disc brake, if you pull the lever slowly and watch the rotor shouldn't move, so the pads should come to meet the rotor basically. But at the moment, after having made an adjustment there, the rotor's moving across to the side quite significantly, and obviously that's loading up the lever when you're pulling it, so it makes it feel a bit spongy. Does that meet your approval, Mr. Clarkson?
That feels so good. I forgot quite how nice cable brakes can be.
They're good, they're brilliant. Like, it's amazing. People really shy away from them, but it's so light and easy to pull, and it's the word you use is boff.
Yeah.
Boff. The brakes on and off. You can feel it. It feels good.